That's right, welcome back to This Film is Lit. It's the prequel to the 14th episode. We haven't seen anything new or interesting, so there's no review/discussion of current media this week. We're just going to go hot and heavy on Gone Girl previews, because we got some stuff to talk about. And then next week, it's Gone Girl time. So let's get right into it. It's our preview of Gone Girl.
Nick Dunn, you're probably the most hated man in America right now. Did you kill your wife, Nick?
I didn't know Tyler Perry was in this movie.
Spoilers. Tyler Perry's in this movie. It's the only thing I've ever seen him in that wasn't terrible. To be fair, it's the only thing I've ever seen him in that wasn't a Tyler Perry movie. So,
throwing some shade.
I think. Well, I've only ever seen one Tyler Perry movie, and it's the worst.
It was pretty bad.
The worst. Katie, let's talk about the 2012 novel Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn.
I think it's Jillian.
Jillian, yeah.
Yeah.
You can go either way. So some are Gillian, some are Jillian.
I really enjoyed this book, so I'm excited to see the movie. I'm excited to talk about it. I do have some trivia, some fun facts for us. Gone Girl blends the crime, mystery, and suspense genres. It's a thriller. Part of what makes it unique, at least for me, because it's not a genre that I read a lot, typically. Although I might now, because I liked it.
Yeah.
But it kind of takes the idea of the unreliable narrator and cranks it up. And we talked about the unreliable narrator a little bit in the Fight Club episode.
Yeah.
And like the difference for me was that whereas with Fight Club, I kind of never trusted that the narrator might be reliable. With Gone Girl, you start out thinking that people are reliable, and then like halfway through the book, it's like, oh, never mind. Yeah. They are not.
Yeah. That's reflected in the film, from what I remember. I have seen this movie once. Katie has not seen it at all. It's been a while, and it was late, so I don't remember all of the beats, and it's a long movie. It's almost 3 hours long.
Oh, gosh.
Maybe not. I could be wrong, but it's like it's a long movie, so I don't remember all of it. But I think that's reflected in the film, the sort of where you start questioning. I could be wrong, but.
Yeah. Gone Girl is Gillian Flynn's third novel. The other two are Sharp Objects and Dark Places, but it is her most successful novel as of yet. It spent 8 weeks in the #1 spot on the New York Times hardcover fiction bestseller list. Quite the accomplishment. And 26 weeks on NPR's hardcover fiction bestseller list. Also quite the accomplishment.
Yeah.
It didn't win any prestigious literary awards.
Yeah.
A lot of critics attribute that to genre snobbery, and I would tend to agree.
It's definitely something that I would say probably tends to fall more into your pulpy, sort of middle-aged housewife reading that people look down on their noses at.
It is pulpy, but the writing is really good.
Yeah,
like the prose is really good.
I don't even mean it is that. I'm saying I could.
I mean that's what we say when we say genre snobbery.
Yes.
Looking down on something for the category that it falls into, rather than investigating whether or not it could have actual literary merit.
Right.
Which I think it did. Anyway. It was widely praised for its suspense and its plot twists and its psychological dimensions and its exploration of the darker aspects of marriage relationships.
Yes, that's definitely a key aspect of the film.
Yeah. Sounds familiar. Yeah.
Sounds very familiar.
Flynn did face some criticism, though, some accusations of misogyny due to her often unflattering depiction of female characters. I think she kind of takes a different view of it, though.
She does.
She does consider herself a feminist, and I've got a quote from her that I thought was interesting that I wanted to read.
Okay.
People will dismiss trampy, vampy, bitchy types, but there's still a big pushback against the idea that women can be just pragmatically evil, bad, and selfish. I've grown quite weary of the spunky heroines, the brave rape victims, and the soul-searching fashionistas that stock so many books. I particularly mourn the lack of female villains. Good, potent female villains. So, I mean, we could almost call it like a post-feminist viewpoint.
I think that might be the best way to describe it.
It's kind of like this idea that women don't have to be portrayed in a positive light. They can be villains.
And that's yes, and I think we would both agree that that is an ideal. Yeah. That you would like to strive for, that anybody of any, gender, minority, whatever group, could be any sort of character, evil, good, bad, mixed, whatever. Because that was one of my big things watching the movie, and we've touched on it a few times in older episodes when I talked about Gone Girl. I was interested to see once you read it and once we watched it, because that was definitely a thing that hit a nerve with me that I thought was that it had slightly problematic elements to it. And then I went and I did some reading about it and what her feelings about it were, or the author. And, it's interesting. It definitely gave me a new perspective on where it was trying to go, what she was trying to do with it. And I'll have more to talk about it in the movie side, and then even more next week when we actually watch it. But yeah, it's an interesting take, or an interesting, direction to go.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how her vision of that translates when we have a dude directing it. Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Flynn did grow up in Missouri. She's from Kansas City originally, so barely Missouri, but. Yeah. I mean, I guess St. Louis is barely Missouri too. Yeah, to be fair.
I mean, where I grew up in yeah.
We can take a drive downtown and stare at Illinois.
Yeah.
So.
It's still Missouri.
It's still Missouri. But I did think that was interesting because, like, some of the native Missourians that she writes into the book, boy, are they true to life. They're not just, like, they're recognizable, but it's not the stereotype that you're used to seeing in media. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Since we are from Missouri and live in small town Missouri.
That was all I had.
Oh, that's all you got? All right. Well, then, let's move on to the 2014 film based on Gone Girl.
Everyone told us marriage is hard work. Not for me and Nick.
As you all know, my wife, Amy Elliott Dunn, disappeared 3 days ago.
2014, directed by David Fincher, as we discussed, of Seven fame and Fight Club fame and other movies that he's done that I can't think of off the top of my head. It was, in fact, the screenplay was written by Gillian Flynn. Right. Normally, an author will not adapt their own screenplay unless they're also a screenwriter, which she was not previous to this. She really had no intent on being a screenwriter, from my understanding. She just wanted to be an author. But she wrote a first draft, which a lot of times authors write a first draft for a screenplay.
Sure.
And David Fincher liked it so much and he talked to her about it, and they realized they liked the same things about the story and kind of wanted to make sure that they highlighted and that the movie hit the main points that they thought were important about the story, and they realized they agreed on what they thought was important.
So they had a similar vision,
and so he goes, well, you should just do it then, basically.
Well, that gives me hope.
Yeah. So from what I understand, it's a fairly good adaptation because she did it. So like I said, even if it's not a super I know it's a close adaptation, but even if the things it changes are still would be in line with her vision, you would think, to some extent, of the story. Now, there are little things once you get into how actors do certain things, right, or how certain lines are delivered that the director has more control over that she doesn't, that could change entirely how you how things are edited, that could change entirely how you interpret character motivations and that sort of thing. And, she had very little say in any of that, I would imagine. I'm sure she had some sort of say on the final cut. Absolutely can't do. I don't know. Who knows? But so anyways, we'll see how what you think it does, how the adaptation ends up working out. But she wrote it. She apparently had to, it was like reading screenplay books, like how to write a screenplay, because she had no idea what she was doing. But it was apparently a very collaborative effort between her and David Fincher. They went back and forth and talked on the phone for hours and sent scripts and drafts back and forth, just a ton of times.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. We've talked about this before with David Fincher, that he is a notorious overshooter and a notorious let's do 800 takes of this scene. Now, my friend Kyle, who I do a YouTube show with, Good, Bad, or Bad Bad, is actually in this movie because, as we've alluded to before, this movie was like 95% shot in the town we live in, Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
It's our claim to fame.
It's our claim to fame. They shot some interiors and a couple. I think the main thing they didn't shoot here, from what I understand, was some of Neil Patrick Harris's house. I believe was like in L.A. and some other.
That makes sense because it's supposed to be like a fancy mansion.
It's a very like
type.
modern mansion type thing, and
we don't have a lot of those here.
There's some nice houses in areas, and there's some nice like because like Nick's house and Amy's house is here somewhere in some suburb. So
interesting.
I think that was shot in L.A. and some of the other interior stuff in certain places was shot in L.A. But a lot of the like 90% of it or something ridiculous was shot in Cape Girardeau. So a lot of the extras and that sort of thing were pulled from students and people that worked and lived in town. My friend Kyle was an extra in one scene. We'll put a link to it at some point. It's major spoilers in the scene, so if you haven't seen the movie, don't watch the clip. But he told me that scene that he is in, they probably shot 40 to 50 times or something ridiculous. Which, it's a very climactic moment of the film, so I understand, but apparently that's just how he shoots everything, is like a billion takes, which, far be it from me to criticize how David Fincher makes a film, because he's a fantastic filmmaker, but there's lots of...
like, expensive.
It's very expensive, for one thing. It can be. It's a little cheaper if you're shooting digitally as opposed to on film, which I actually didn't... I could look that up. I'm not exactly sure if this was shot... I would bet Fincher shoots on film still, but I don't know. But there are a lot of really good filmmakers who can make really, really good movies who don't need 50 takes. And so it just makes me, to me, it kind of speaks to sort of I don't want to say an egoism. Again, I don't want to critique. I do not remotely have the experience or the pedigree to critique David Fincher. Something about it kind of rubs me the wrong way when you hear that directors do things like that. It's just like you could. There's no way you couldn't do that in 20 takes. Certain scenes for certain things, maybe, but it just makes me think you might be an asshole. There's other directors that famously do a lot of takes. Turns out a lot of them tend to be assholes. Your Kubricks, So it's just something interesting about the movie. And in relation to Kyle, he had to he's like part of the news crew, one of the news crews, and he's carrying a big camera. He said he had to run up a hill with that camera like literally like 40 or 50 times in the middle. I guess it was fall when they shot. It's like September, or it was like August through November or something like that. I can't remember. It might have been really hot.
Probably still oppressively hot.
Drenched in sweat in the scene from apparently running up that hill a million times. And maybe that's part of what he wanted, maybe he wanted everyone to be realistically drenched in sweat. Yeah, and exasperated, and I'm sure that all plays into it, but it just, okay. So, getting into some of the criticisms, and I don't want to get too far into this week because there's a lot to discuss about it after we watch the movie and can get really into the discussion, and we'll have both been refreshed on character moments and story beats and everything. But there was a lot of blowback from critics. In general, critics really like the movie, and it is a very good movie, regardless of what you think about some of the themes. It's a very well executed movie, as all of David Fincher's films are. But there was some blowback for the movie as well, like you said with the book, some sort of a feminist angled blowback, and Flynn was not expecting that, at least from some of the quotes I've read from her. Part of the things she wanted to portray is she wanted to go against the notion that women are sort of naturally good. Yeah. The idea that women are just good and that they can be as violently minded as men can be, which again, that's sort of a post-feminist type of critique, or not critique, but viewpoint. And it's, I don't disagree with it. It's just an interesting thing to discuss, and we will discuss it eventually. Yeah, for sure. But in an interview in 2014, she said that after the book, I guess the film or the book, one of the two, came out and she got all this blowback, she said there was like 24 hours where she like just hid in her room and was like, I killed feminism. Why did I do that? I did not mean to do that. She said she very quickly got over it. But there was a period where, like, when she started getting that blowback, which I can imagine, it's just the blowback in general in the age of social media is, regardless of what side, air quotes, side you're on, it can come fast and hard. So It can be hard to handle. I don't know if I want to get into any of the other stuff I have here about the sort of feminist critique. I think we'll save that for the episode, because it's meaty.
I'm excited to sink my teeth into it.
It's meaty. But yes, needless to say, I think this is one of the quotes that I thought was very interesting, and I can't remember. Some critic said that either Amy, the character of Amy, or Gone Girl as a whole, might be the first piece of literature / first character to be both simultaneously misandrist and misogynist. Which, it's a hot take, but it's an interesting... I after having watched the movie, I'm not sure I can disagree. So we'll see. We'll get there. I don't know. I have a weird relationship with David Fincher from the movies I've seen of his. One of the reasons he cast Rosamund Pike. Mm-hmm. Well, first, let's do this. First, here are some of the other actresses that were considered. Okay. For the role of Amy. In this first one, she was involved from the process very early on as a producer. Mm-hmm. Ended up staying on as a producer, and she was initially cast basically to be Amy, but then in some stage they decided against it. And that would be Reese Witherspoon. Legally Blonde herself.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's probably the one that makes the least sense out of this list. Because the rest of them make perfect sense to me. And that would be Charlize Theron. Yep. Natalie Portman. Yep. Emily Blunt. Yep. Rooney Mara. Mm-hmm. Olivia Wilde.
A whole lot of sense.
Somebody named Abby Cornish, who I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, I don't know her off the top of my head.
Julian Hough. So all of those make a lot of sense to me, other than maybe Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon is so sweet looking.
Yeah, and I could see that being...
I could see that
appealing.
Being interesting, yeah.
But I agree. I think any of the rest of those make a lot of sense. Maybe not so much Reese Witherspoon. But Rosamund Pike, I think, is a good choice.
Amy is supposed to be very, very pretty. Yeah. But I pictured her more intimidating pretty. Yeah. And not sweet pretty. And not
sweet pretty. Yeah. And the rest of those are all intimidating pretty, for the most part. I mean, yeah, I think they all are. So I could see that. So one of the reasons he chose Rosamund Pike ultimately was she's 35 at the time of the filming. Right. She was 35, and one of the things he liked about her was that her ambiguous age, her ambiguous appearance of her age. When you look at her, you could put her age range anywhere from 45 to 25. He thought, with her being 35, which is a thing to me that sort of rubs me the wrong way.
It's a little weird.
And we'll talk about next week why I think that's weird. Yeah. Remind me to put why. I'll try to come up with how to vocalize why I think that's weird. It relates back to some of the problems I have with it from I said not misogynist, but from a sort of weird, the problematic elements I feel about it, and that being a reason he decided to cast her sort of ties in to part of the things that I found problematic about it. But
I'll be interested to talk about that, because depending on how some of the themes translate, I might have insight on that from the book. Okay. So
that'll be interesting. I don't know. It's something about it. Yeah. So, and then the last thing I got here, which I think is interesting, is two of the male leads who were considered before they settled on Mr. Ben Affleck. One of them makes perfect sense. The other one, I don't understand at all. So, the first one was Ryan Reynolds.
That makes sense.
Which, yeah, makes a lot of sense. He's very similar-ish looking to Ben Affleck, kind of. Your classic handsome leading man.
Kind of generic handsome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How dare you call Ryan Reynolds generic?
Generic handsome.
And the other one was Seth Rogen.
Yeah, that's a weird choice.
Which that one to me doesn't make quite as much sense.
Yeah, Nick is supposed to be generic handsome. Yeah. He's farm boy handsome.
Yeah, he's small town Missouri handsome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Seth Rogen's small town Missouri funny. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to disparage his comedic chops. I think he's very funny.
I don't think I've ever seen him in a dramatic role.
Not purely dramatic.
Sure, I can imagine that.
Not purely dramatic, and this is pretty much purely dramatic. I mean, there are obviously moments of light-hearted, humorous moments, but not. I mean, it's very much a drama. I'm trying to think. There must be something he's in that's...
I'm sure he's been in something.
But I can't think of what it would be. I mean, he has definitely, in some things I've seen, he's had more serious moments that where he does fine, you know, where he comes off okay. Yeah. I think he could probably do it. I just think from looks-wise... I bet the reason they considered him is just how good Seth Rogen is at looking befuddled. You know what I mean? Like, just baffled at the situation he's in.
Yeah.
I can kind of think, like, just when you see, like, just like when Seth Rogen is reacting to something somebody else is doing that is just like he doesn't understand what's going on. I can see how that might have been a thing that they looked at and been like, that's good. But for the rest of it, I don't know. This is the only thing I can think of why they would consider Seth Rogen. So, anyways, that's what I got for the movie. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm excited. It's been a while since I've seen it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how your feelings on it compare to your feelings on the book. And if you feel the same sort of # problematic elements that I felt. Did you feel that at all from the book? Did you get any of that from the book?
I mean...
Did it give you any of that just sort of like weird feeling?
Not really, no.
Okay.
It didn't feel so much like that to me. I am excited, though, because I really enjoyed the book.
Yeah.
5 out of 5 stars.
Really?
For me. I finished 8 books this year.
Already.
So far, and I think that was the one that I liked the best so far.
Yeah, I mean, I've always heard it's a really great book. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'll just be interested to... And I'm not like dead set on the idea that it is problematic or that it is misogynist. And I don't even necessarily think it is. I just think it's an interesting thing to talk about, and especially when you take into context what the author has said about it and other thing. I think it'll be an interesting discussion to have. And it's one of the ones I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Yeah, and I'm interested to see like how things translate because there's a lot of nuance in the book. I think that's from what I understand, I haven't read a lot of criticism of the movie, or at least I have avoided it. But the little I've seen from people that have read the book do allude to the fact that the book provides a little more nuance to certain characters that is somewhat lacking in the movie, and thus results in a more problematic narrative. Okay. Is what I've vaguely heard, but we'll see. We'll see if we feel that way or not. I'll be interested to see what you have for Lost in Translation then, or Lost in Adaptation. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, Lost in Adaptation. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to see. I'm trying to think of... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. We'll see. So, anyways, I got a week till that comes out. Go out, read it, watch it. It's a great film. Like I said, regardless of how your feelings on some of the themes and that sort of thing and some of the more problematic elements of it, is a dynamite movie. It's thrilling. It's beautifully shot, well crafted. So, I mean, it's not fun to watch. It's very enjoyable. So I would recommend it from that regard. But, and one thing we might try to do is we're going to run around our town and after we watch it. We'll have to do this after we watch it. Because we'll have to like stop and take notes of like, okay, well that's here. Because we know we're always, it's so funny watching the movie, I've lived in this town for almost 10 years now, since college. And it's so funny because it's just like everything. It's just like, oh, yep, know that place, 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 know that place. There's some of them though where it's like, okay, I know that place, but where is that place? Like there's one shot in particular where somebody lives in a house where you can see the bridge in the background, our big bridge in the background. And I'm wondering if it wasn't composited like a CG or something, because I'm like, I know the angle we're looking at the bridge, unless it's from Illinois. I don't know. I know the angle we're looking at the bridge, and then I'm like, where the hell would that house, because it's like a house in a field. I'm like, where would that possibly be? Yeah, I don't know. So we'll have to see with some of that kind of stuff. But we might run around and take some pictures. The bar is still... if you've seen the movie, the bar in the movie that tourist location Ben Affleck owns still exists, and it operates as the bar in our town. And you can go inside and have a drink there. And I think the inside's a little different than it was in the movie, but we'll go by and see after we watch it. So look out for that. That should be interesting. You can see all the spots from the movie, and I'll point out the people I know when they show up in the movie, because there's at least 3 or 4 people. One of my old professors is in it. A handful of my coworkers are in it. And I'm sure a couple students that I was in school with are in it. So Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun movie. So yeah, until next time, unless you got anything else, keep reading books, keep watching movies. Go check out Gone Girl, because we about to be gone, girl.
Oh boy.